Hope you had a great Memorial Day weekend. Thanks to all of you who've supported our program yesterday, raising money for thefund.org. It's our 20th year in a row doing that Memorial Day fundraiser for the fund, and lots of you stepped up with your 20s and your 50s and your 100s to support those wounded in the long wars and their recovery. Great way to honor the fallen. Fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I made the trek over to Arlington. It's about a 7-mile walk from where we park. And there's a big crowd because the president wasn't there. We don't go where the president is. We visit graves of people that we either know or their family members. And we got lost in Section 8. I texted someone familiar with Arlington. I said, how do you figure out this coordinate? And he says, it gets a little dicey over there in Section 8 beyond Eisenhower Avenue. So we never found the grave, but we did honor a lot of the fallen, stop and say a prayer for them all. It is the holiest place in America. And I think a fabulous, fabulous place to visit when you're in town on Memorial Day. A lot of news over the weekend. I am tempted to begin with the idiotic National Public Radio and their suing of President Trump. But I'll come back to that. There's plenty of time for that because most of us take a break. I took a break. Genghis Kate was in town. In fact, all 7 grandchildren were here or within reach. They weren't all here in the house. Genghis Kate and T-Rex Teddy took up most of my time. Genghis Kate, however, can read now. She's done with kindergarten and she can actually read, sight read books. And this has worked a miraculous thing in that books take longer and there's less chasing her. So, and there's less mayhem. But T-Rex is stepping into the void, so I'm exhausted. I need a vacation from long weekends when the family gathered. But many of you probably did not watch the Sunday news at all. President Trump had a gaggle in Florida. Very important part of that is cut number 3.
Commission President von der Leyen, did you discuss the 50% tariffs and did you agree to release?
She just called me, as you know, and she asked for an extension on the June 1st date. And she said she wants to get down to serious negotiation because I told you specifically, but I told anybody that would listen. They have to do that. And we had a very nice call, and I agreed to move it. I believe June 9th would be, July 9th would be the date. That was the date she requested. Could we move it from June 1st to July 9th? And I agreed to do that. And that she said we will rapidly get together and see if we can work something out.
Well, that met markets are ebullient today. And if you're just tuning in, we're an hour from the close, but let me do the market report brought to you by AmericanFederal.com. American Federal's number is 800-221-7694 if you're going to buy or sell gold today. And they're the people you do it with, no one else. Call up Nick Rovich and his team. They've been in the business for 42, almost 43 years. And you can reach them at 800-221-7694. They'll do small deals. They'll do large deals. They've done 7-figure purchases. They will buy your gold if that's what you need done. But all you need to do is call 800-221-7694. Go to AmericanFederal.com. Well, the Dow is up 1.7% at this hour. The S&P is up almost 2% at this hour. The NASDAQ is up 2.34% at this hour. And gold is down almost 2% to $3,300 an ounce. So this may be the dip that was here last week and then left by Friday's end and might be back now on Tuesday. So if you're thinking about gold, today would be the day to call Nick Rovich. And it's so straightforward. How much do you want to buy? What do you want to buy? When do you want to buy it? Here's how you get me the money. Here's the commission that we charge. Here's how we evaluate the assay, the value of gold that you want to send us to assay and buy from you. But do that. A lot of people have been sitting on the sidelines waiting for any kind of a meaningful drop. Well, 2% is a meaningful drop. 800-221-7694. President Trump not only, the biggest story of the day is what President Trump said about Putin. Cut number 5.
Yeah, I'll give you an update. I'm not happy with what Putin's doing. He's killing a lot of people, and I don't know what the hell happened to Putin. I've known him a long time, always gotten along with him. But he's sending rockets into cities and killing people, and I don't like it at all, okay? We're in the middle of talking, and he's shooting rockets into Kiev and other cities. I don't like it at all.
Okay, so what does that mean? He also said Putin is crazy in a post. and not the guy he's worked with before, does that change the United States provision of weaponry to Ukraine? I hope so. Hope they give him. Earlier today, the Chancellor of Germany, Merz, the new Chancellor of Germany, announced that there are no more restrictions on the weaponry that the German and the allies in Europe provide to Ukraine. So Ukraine can use those weapons to attack further and deeper into Russia. So the war may get better, may get more intense before it gets better. Donald Trump was also asked about Harvard, Fair Harvard, which I wanted to bring the hammer down, cut number 4.
Look, part of the problem with Harvard is that there are about 31%, almost 31% of foreigners coming to Harvard. We give them billions of dollars, which is ridiculous. We do grants, which we're probably not going to be doing much grants anymore to Harvard. But they're 31%, but they refuse to tell us who the people are. We want to know who the people. Now, a lot of the foreign students we wouldn't have a problem with. I'm not going to have a problem with foreign students. But it shouldn't be 31%. It's too much because we have Americans that want to go there and to other places, and they can't go there because you have 31% foreign. Now, no foreign government contributes money to Harvard. We do. So why are they doing so many? Number one. Number two, we want a list of those foreign students, and we'll find out whether or not they're okay. Many will be okay, I assume. And I assume with Harvard, many will be bad. And then the other thing is they're very anti-Semitic. Everybody knows they're anti-Semitic, and that's got to stop immediately.
Leo Terrell, who runs the anti-Semitism task force at the Department of Justice, told Fox, Harris's Faulkner, yesterday, cut number 11.
We have to fight the fundamental problem. It is normal to hate Jews here. It's become popular. It's on social media.
How did that happen? It's not popular.
I'll tell you why. Because for 4 years, nothing was done to stop it in its tracks. And now it's been allowed to fester. And what happened last Friday? I went last Thursday with those 2 Israeli staffers. I was at the crime scene. I went to the embassy. It was horrific because this type of conduct should never be tolerated, and it's being tolerated only because of what did not occur for the last 4 years. We should have stopped it.
Are you worried about the justice system having too many liberal judges or reputations of being liberal?
Well, it's not a reputation. It's a fact. There are too many judges who are impeding progress, who are eliminating anti-Semitism. For example, that judge who stopped President Trump's demand for information from Harvard. It's ridiculous. It's going to be overturned. It's going to go to the Supreme Court, but it delays the process. But Trump is not going to be deterred.
So set up the legal fight now going forward, because it won't just be Harvard.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. Let me tell you right now, I want everyone to understand this. Unlike the previous administration, expect massive lawsuits against UC systems who still practice on the East Coast, on the West Coast, in the Midwest. Expect hate crime charges filed by the federal government. Expect Title VII lawsuits against those individuals who are not being protected simply because they're Jewish. This is going to stop. We've got a full front of activity in the courtroom. We're going to meet them in court. And one other fact that I cannot disclose, we are going to go after them where it hurts them financially. And there's numerous ways. I hope you can read between the lines. There's numerous ways to hurt them financially.
Well said, Leo. Let me go back to, by the way, I'll have David Mamet on tomorrow. His brand new book, The Disenlightenment, made up most of my reading last night. And it's quite a remarkable testament to President Trump and the fact that every other ethnic group moved towards Trump in the 2024 election except Jews, 79% of whom continue to vote for Joe Biden. David Mamet, who is Jewish, cannot understand it, writes about it, talks about the only way you can't change a narrative. People have to open their eyes. And we'll talk with him tomorrow about it. Back to Donald Trump at the Sunday Florida press conference. Cut number 1.
The one big, beautiful bill, and it is a big, beautiful bill. And so I think the Senate is going to get there. I hope they're going to get there. I think they're going to have changes. Some will be minor and some will be, fairly significant. But we've been working with the House all the way up. They've been working together. And the Speaker has been working with the leader of the Senate. And, they've done a great job. John Thune and Mike Johnson have done a fantastic job.
Get to taxcutsnow.com. That's one of our sponsors, Job Creators Network. President's very confident. I listened this morning to the Ruthless podcast. They're very confident. I'm very confident. But you still need to go to taxcutsnow.com and throw your weight into the discussion. They're a sponsor of ours, and they're pushing the Senate now to get through the next step, which is to get a bill to the conference. Tax cuts now. Nobody wants a 25% tax hike come January. Everybody knows they've got to pass the one big beautiful bill. Taxcutsnow.com. Taxcutsnow.com. Add your voice to the voice of millions. Head over to Tax Cuts Now during the break and say, I'm with you, Donald Trump. I'm with you, Speaker Johnson. I'm with you, Leader Thune. TaxCutNow.com. Hope you had a great Memorial Day weekend. Noah C. Rothman joined me from his New Jersey headquarters of Noah C. Rothman International, where he is the senior editor of National Review. Noah, I hope you had a great Memorial Day weekend.
I absolutely did. I hope you had the same.
We did. Noah, on May 1st, Donald Trump issued an executive order directing the Corporation for Public Broadcast to end funding for NPR and PBS. I worked for PBS for 10 years, from 1992 to 2002, doing the nightly news in L.A. and doing a national show for them. But that was back in the early days of cable when they still had a mission. NPR sued the president today. Your thoughts on this latest controversy?
My thoughts are nowhere near as well developed as my colleague, Dan McLaughlin, over at National Review, who has written about that, and I commend it to your attention. The lawsuit it has within the language of the lawsuit this contradictory argument that is made by NPR and its supporters. Routinely, it is that NPR's funding from public enterprises, from the government, from taxpayers, is so minimal, it makes up such a marginal portion of its operating budget, that there really is very little point to stripping it of that largesse. At the same time, however, if you were to do so, it would throttle Americans' access to news generally, because it would result in the closure of small NPR affiliates who subsist on these federal taxpayer dollars. And so you would get a lot of layoffs and you get a lot fewer stations, and Americans would exist in a news desert where they cloister themselves on YouTube and TikTok, consume disinformation, and then sacrifice the republic. Fundamentally, this is where the argument goes. It gets very cyclical and very hyperbolic quickly. I don't find them. I'm not an attorney. I can't speak to the merits of the legal case necessarily, but I don't find that argument compelling. And it certainly is justified that the Trump administration and any Republican administration, because this isn't a Trump initiative, this isn't a MAGA initiative, this is something Republicans have sought since I've been aware of Republican policy preferences, that they have a legitimate argument to the notion that viewpoint discrimination on these outlets is naked, obvious, and runs contrary to the Constitution's protections against that sort of preferential treatment. I think the arguments made by Republicans are the better arguments. The courts may disagree, but I would be surprised, frankly, based on my reading of this, very preliminary reading of this lawsuit.
Now, my couple of points with you, Noah. You're right about the news desert fallacy. That might have been the case in the early 60s when PBS got started, that Sesame Street was useful and it was only available on over-the-air broadcast channels that PBS would be subsidized by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. NPR did All Things Considered in the morning, and people were driving back in the desert. Now there are a million choices. No one has to get their news from NPR or PBS. But as to viewpoint discrimination, I will end my segment with you in 4 minutes, and I will do an ad. And I've been doing this for 30 years. I've been supporting myself on a Hugh Hewitt show for 30 years because advertisers want to advertise with me. I get no money from the government. It seems to me prima facie case that if there are private radio stations operating and the left-wing people are getting the money, the viewpoint discrimination is against me and my colleagues on the center-right and conservative side. I don't want to hear that from them because it's absurd. They're subsidized by the government, and I'm not.
Yeah, precisely. You're talking about a category error. And then we quickly move away from the point you just make, if you're arguing with people who support public funding for NPR and PBS, to the point you made previously, the Sesame Street case, right? As though this programming, very public oriented, public facing, salutary, I would say as much, is just absolutely vital to the national conversation, and it has to be subsidized. Otherwise, certain Americans won't get it. You still hear the Sesame Street argument being made by these people as though it's 2012. It's not 2012 anymore. Sesame Street is a property that is, last I checked, owned by Netflix, which is a subscription service, which you have to shell out your own money in order to access. It's just the talking points have not evolved with the evolving media landscape, and the landscape has been evolving very rapidly over the last 15, 20 years. And it's time for America's conception of what media is and what should be promoted and perhaps even enjoy federal subsidies. I don't think anything should, but you can have that, or you can make a good faith argument in that realm. But the argument that is being made that these properties, these ancient storied properties like Sesame Street that we should all be deferential to, would not exist but for public support, is just outdated. It's a fallacy.
Well,
it
not
doesn't
only
need
that,
to be engaged.
There are other documentarians than Ken Burns. They are in the business of making money on top of money, and they are in the business of exploiting their ties to the emotional upbringing. There's hardly a parent out there that hasn't used Sesame Street as an introduction to television for their child, but it is dated and it's wrong, and I hope that they lose. What about Harvard, Noah, which has also sued the president over the cutoff of federal funds?
Yeah, so I'm of mixed emotions on this one. I think Harvard is getting what it asked for. A lot of these funds are dedicated to research, medical research, scientific research, and I think medical and scientific research is good. The degree to which this administration has tried to make a test case out of Harvard, again, I think they've asked for it. I think they deserve it. However, I also see this as retributive, excessive. I would hate to see this from a Democratic administration coming after a college that, for example, has religious affiliations or is explicitly conservative in its approach. Even most of those don't take public funds, so they're not exposed as Harvard is. Nevertheless, I see this as an effort to execute political retaliation against a political adversary and make an example of them. And I think that's really sordid. It's not the sort of thing I want to see from the federal government. I think they had a really good case against Harvard and Columbia when it comes to the anti-Semitism EO and the extent to which the behaviors that were captured by that EO and are being aggressively prosecuted either in the justice system or elsewhere, totally valid and 100% asked for. This, however, going after, for example, federal or foreign students, as though that's part of Harvard's conception of itself. It really isn't. But we shouldn't be criminalizing that process or creating disincentives to import the best and brightest from abroad because we want that. We want that human capital. And this is the sort of thing that can put downward pressure on that. And as a result, our economic activity, productivity, and growth. I don't want to see that either. So there's a tender balance that needs to be maintained here. And I don't think the administration has struck it.
Part of the argument back I got over the weekend from people on the foreign students is that half of Harvard's foreign students are Chinese Communist Party affiliated, and that I should dig into that, but we will do that later. Noah C. Rothman, thank you. If you didn't have a great Memorial Day weekend, it's probably because you did not have besthotgrill.com on your backyard barbecue, and you can fix that in time for dads and grads. There are still graduations going on. And there's still Father's Day coming up in 2 weeks, and I really want to focus on Father's Day. This is the perfect gift for Father's Day, besthotgrill.com, the Solaire Infrared Grill, the big one. You can try it before you buy it, or you can just say, okay, I'm going to trust Hewitt on this. I've got one on both coasts. They are fabulous. They go to 3,000 degrees, or 1,000 degrees in 3 minutes. They bake in all the juices, all the wonderful meat, the best grilling in the world. They're made in America. As I said, you can try it before you buy it. They got all sizes, but get the good one for dad or granddad at besthotgrill.com. If you act now, you'll be able to get that done before Father's Day, maybe before graduation for grads and dads. Get the grads the hibachi, but get dad or grandpa the big one at besthotgrill.com. Made in America, besthotgrill.com.
Talks with Iran yesterday and today, and let's see what happens, but I think we could have some good news on the Iran front. Likewise with Hamas on Gaza. We want to see if we can stop that. And Israel, we've been talking to them, and we want to see if we can stop that whole situation.
I'm joined now on the Hugh Hewitt Show by Dr. Michael Orr, and that was President Trump yesterday. Michael, how did you respond to that?
Well, it set off a lot of alarms in the state of Israel. I've been on the Israeli news probably nonstop since he said that. It was not surprising to me, none of it. I've been saying for several weeks now in Israel that President Trump would eventually say, "Okay, guys, you got another week to go in Gaza. It's not unlimited time." The headline in Israeli news yesterday was that the IDF thinks it can take 75% of Gaza, its territory, within 2 months. And my response was, who thinks that they have 2 months to operate? The president wants to end the war. The president wants to advance Saudi-Israel peace. It can't do that if we're fighting in Gaza. He wants to see the hostages released. I think he's being very clear about it.
Now, I am most concerned. I'm not actually concerned about Gaza. I don't think he's going to stop you in Gaza or try to stop you in Gaza because his base doesn't like Hamas at all. But I'm concerned about the idea that they had good talks with Iran because I don't believe we can possibly get a deal with Iran. And Khamenei has said that. What could the president have been told that would be different, Dr. Oren?
I don't know, because the readout from the Iranian side was not very good. It said the talks weren't very constructive, that they were tough. And if the administration is going to hew to its position that the goal of these talks is the dismantling of Iran's nuclear facilities, it's good. I don't think Iran will ever agree to it, in which case the other options are not just on the table, they're in the air.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And by the way, I do not discount the idea that President Trump is waving a false flag here about we're doing our best, we're doing our best, we're doing our best when he's personally reconciled to the fact they have to strike Iran. Talk to me about the collapse of the attempt to distribute food in Gaza today. I'm not surprised, actually. Hamas has no incentive in allowing that to move forward. Are you optimistic that that can be turned around?
Well, it wasn't a total wash today. They distributed 13,000 of the 14,000 food packages. Hamas did its utmost to try to disrupt this. There's a sense here that Hamas itself was involved in the riots, the great sort of stampede for these food packages. And then Hamas has set up roadblocks to prevent Palestinians from getting to the food. Now, let's see what the international community is going to say about that. How Hamas is actually stopping Palestinians from getting to their food. So let's see how it goes in the next couple of days. But one thing we have to understand, whoever controls the food controls Gaza. Okay? And Hamas understands that very well. And he's not going to go quietly into that foodless night.
All right, last question. I read about the 75% plan. It made sense to me to clear and hold 75% of Gaza and then reduce and hopefully get the hostages at the same time. Does that plan have widespread support in Israel, Dr. Michael Oren?
It does not. It has about 30% support, about 70%, according to all the recent polls. Again, we're going according to polls. Think that Israelis think that we should cut a deal with Hamas, get a ceasefire, get the hostages out. Tomorrow will mark 600 days of this war, 600 days that these people have been in unspeakable, torturous captivity, and it's tearing this country apart. And the majority of people, even I know, say, okay, cut a deal, let Hamas survive whatever way it survives, and the next time they violate a ceasefire, we'll go out and kill them. It won't be so easy, and Hamas is not stupid. They're going to try to lock us into a permanent ceasefire, either with a Security Council resolution or an agreement with the United States. Last thing I heard was that the Hamas wants to have a public handshake with Steve Witkoff.
Wow. He can't do that. That would be a disaster for Donald Trump. But
Right.
I am a little disappointed, Dr. Oren, that only 25% of the tunnel network has been destroyed, according to yesterday's story. Are you surprised and are you disappointed by that?
No, I'm not surprised nor disappointed. Listen, there are hostages down there. This is a subway. This is a tunnel system that is as long as the New York subway system. Imagine how much you'd have to do to destroy that. And it's unlike the New York subway system, it's beneath the city. So you destroy a tunnel, you destroy entire swaths and neighborhoods. Extremely dangerous. It's even dangerous for our soldiers. So ultimately, it won't be a matter of destroying the tunnels. It'll be filling them up with seawater. That is what the Egyptians used to do in its old days. We can't do that because the hostages are out of there. But once they're out, we can begin to systematically destroy them and flood them.
And so you think there's going to be a deal, Dr. Oren?
I think there'd be a deal, but it would help if the United States and Israel stayed on the same page. Because Hamas's position is actually getting tougher, not weaker, because they sense some daylight between Israel and the United States.
I agree. Michael Oren, former ambassador of Israel to the United States, always welcome guest here on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Thank you, Doctor.
Yeah, I'll give you an update. I'm not happy with what Putin's doing. He's killing a lot of people, and I don't know what the hell happened to Putin. I've known him a long time, always gotten along with him, but he's sending rockets into cities and killing people, and I don't like it at all, okay? We're in the middle of talking, and he's shooting rockets into Kiev and other cities. I don't like it at all.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. That was Donald Trump on Sunday. I'm joined by David M. Drucker of the Dispatch. David, before I read you the specifics, what'd you make of that statement?
Well, it was interesting. The president is always, he's just never in a hurry to criticize Vladimir Putin, which is different than just about every other human being alive on planet Earth. I've asked him about that in the past. I've never been given an answer that explained it to me, but what I'm saying is whenever the president criticizes Vladimir Putin, is upset with him, I think it's notable. I think the question now is, does the president get sufficiently annoyed that he backs it up with more military aid to Ukraine, more intelligence sharing? The only way you're going to bring this war to an end is to squeeze Vladimir Putin. I mean, other than let Russia overrun Ukraine, and Putin has his own interests. He's rational, but in his way, not our way. And you're not going to negotiate an end to the war by offering him business carrots or acceptance into Western institutions. He doesn't care about any of that.
In today's news items, which is the first thing I read every day, Russian forces conducted one of their largest drone and missile strikes of the war against Ukraine on the night of May 25 to 26 after 3 nights of record strikes. The May 25-26 strike is now the second largest combined strike of the war, after Russian forces conducted the largest combined strike of the war of May 24 to 25. The Ukrainian Air Force reported Russian forces launched 9 Kh-101 cruise missiles from airspace over Saratov Oblast and 355 Shahed and decoy drones from the directions of Bryansk, Kursk, and Oriol. And it goes on and on and on. It does not look to me like Putin's got any interest in peace, David. Does it to you?
No, he's never had any interest in peace, and anybody that thinks that he has interest in peace is just mistaken. Anybody that thinks that we can lure Russia into sort of an anti-China Western sphere, and that's the only explanation that I've ever found, remotely intriguing about soft pedaling our opposition to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, is also mistaken, because Putin doesn't care about any of that, and he's not trustworthy in any event. And if you look back at Nixon going to China, China was an undeveloped country who needed the United States and had specific reasons for wanting to have a bulwark against Russian aggression themselves. This is just simply not going to work. You beat Putin by beating him into submission or squeezing him. And I think this is important too, because China is watching everything the West does, including us. They have designs not just on Taiwan, but much of the Asia Pacific. And that's why this matters so much.
Here is Donald Trump talking about the Iranian talks, cut number 6.
Talks with Iran yesterday and today, and let's see what happens. But I think we could have some good news on the Iran front. Likewise with Hamas on Gaza. We want to see if we can stop that. And Israel, we've been talking to them, and we want to see if we can stop that whole situation.
What do you make of that, David Drucker?
I don't know what to make of it, in that, look, we know what an acceptable deal with Iran would be, that they give up development and possession of anything that could lead to a usable, deliverable nuclear weapon, and they do so permanently. And they also, and this was one thing that the Obama administration just chose purposely not to deal with in their talks, is Iran's malign activities as the largest state sponsor of terrorism around the world. They're threatening of Israel's right to exist, their activities in the United States, in our allies, in the Middle East. That should all be a part of an Iran deal, or there should be no Iran deal. And presumably the reason Donald Trump pulled the United States out of that deal during his first term is because none of these conditions were met. And so if you're going to go back in...
Let me bring, again, something from news items this morning. Truck drivers across Iran have launched a nationwide strike against rising insurance and maintenance costs. The truck drivers are protesting the government's plan to cut the amount of subsidized diesel allocated to truckers. Since May 18th, this has spread from one city to other major cities. Economic-related protests and strikes have the potential to escalate into anti-regime protests. I can't imagine Iran doing a deal with us, but maybe they have to, David. Maybe they're out of money.
Well, yeah, maybe, but I mean, look, we were squeezing them for decades, notwithstanding Biden, handing them pallets of money, and Obama, the Obama administration doing the same. I mean, they've been under economic duress for decades, and this suicidal regime has not seemed to care, and it's an authoritarian regime that regularly puts down unrest or protests. So who knows? I mean, anything is possible.
Who knows?
It
is possible.
If you're looking
David
at
M. Drucker, thank you. Follow David on X at David M. Drucker. Read him at the Dispatch. Let me thank all of you who've already stepped up for Angel Tree. I want you to hear from Janice, an actual Angel Tree mom whose daughter Maddie was blessed to attend an Angel Tree camp because of the generosity of people like you.
And like meeting them and like just the way like their manners were and just, how friendly they were, so welcoming, even though they didn't know us. So I thought that was incredible. And the best thing about it is, having them learn also about Jesus, incorporating that. Something definitely worth experiencing. She was so happy with the food and stuff. Food is delicious.
So you can make that possible for a kid for $200. There's a banner at the top of HughHewitt.com. We've got to get, we got 3 weeks left in our campaign with Food for the Poor. With Angel Tree. 888-206-2764. Call Angel Tree today, 888-206-2764. Time for my relief factor. Because, boy, do I need it. After all 7 grandkids this weekend from ages, the Scholar and the Flash, or the Artful Dodger, are older, but the other ones are 3 and under, and I did a lot of picking up, so actually the back kind of hurts. Relief factor. I take it every day. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, you saw me down it with a little bit of water, because that's how easy it is. Icarian and curcumin, resveratrol, omega. 4 natural ingredients that combine to help your body's anti-inflammatory system. I'm okay today. Last night when I laid my head down, I was stiff. You do this enough if you're watching on the Salem News Channel with 2 3-year-olds, and T-Rex Teddy's built like a log. He is a completely dense human being. And I am telling you, Relief Factor works for grandparents as well as parents. Go to relieffactor.com and find their 3-week special order, or call 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF. That music means Dwayne is here. Dwayne's World must be having a podcast drop tomorrow. But I wanted to check in on myphdweightloss.com, 864-644-1900. That's
864-644-1900.
Long weekends are very tough.
They are.
On dieters, right?
They can be, certainly, yes.
So what did you eat this weekend on the myphdweightloss.com program?
Well, it was also the anniversary for my wife and I, and so...
How many years?
6.
Since I wasn't your best man? It's been 6 years since I wasn't your best man?
6 years since you weren't my best man, yes.
Yeah, just not that it bothered me or anything.
Not you're bitter or anything, no.
I was there at Angel's Day. I was in the suite. I got invited.
Yeah, I know.
Got a hot dog.
And if you thought I was going to have a best man wearing a dopey little Cleveland hat, you were sadly mistaken.
Well, you had a Pirates hat guy in there.
Well, that's different.
So we had hot dogs at My PhD Weight Loss. That was before My PhD. That was when you were chunkier, Dwayne.
That was when I was portlier me, yes.
Portlier Dwayne. So what did you eat this weekend on the anniversary day?
I actually cooked fillets on the best hot grill I have in the backyard. I actually made dinner.
Well, that's appropriate.
I've been doing that for years, as you know, on my wife's birthday.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe that about
I've been making by getting my credit card out and saying, let's make that dinner together.
Yes, that's exactly what you've been doing. The only thing you make is reservations.
But 864?
Yes, 644.
1900, it approved of your choices on your menu?
She loved the choices on the menu. She loves my steaks.
Okay. Well, she's easily persuaded. MyPhDweightloss.com. For those of you who need to lose 50 pounds and you don't want to take the fat shot as the president. Do we have that clip? If I had my soundboard back, I could do that clip.
We don't have your soundboard.
No, we don't. I just wanted to check in on that. MyPhDWeightLoss.com. Let me tell you about AndrewandTodd.com. My friend Andrew Del Rey has been my friend for 25 years now, and I'm back in a Bible study with him because I can do it by Zoom. And Andrew and I are always talking shop at the same time we're talking scripture. And so he's telling me interest rates are kind of stuck right now. The 10-year Treasury today went up a little bit to 4.44%. So if you're going to buy a home, your interest rate's going to be in the sixes. And maybe in the fives if you got like super duper credit and you put a lot down, but probably in the sixes. Call them at 888-888-1172 to find out. But what Andrew always tells me to stress to you, and he reminds me, Todd doesn't call me up and tell me this. He knows Andrew will tell me 8 times, is that if you're a veteran, you don't have to put any money down. If you're a first-time home buyer, they've got the FHA program, and they've got HELOCs available. But the key thing is they put you on the auto file so that when interest rates come down, they will redo your loan quickly. 888-888-1172. You've got to move. You've waited. This is the moving season. This is when houses come on the market. This is when people go from place to place, and therefore they have to sell their house. Now is the time to buy. It's a bit of a buyer's market. 888-888-1172. Get pre-qualified with AndrewandTodd.com. They are a bank with Sierra Pacific Mortgage. They do the lending. 888-888-1172. I hope you had a great Memorial Day weekend. I'm joined by Bret Baier, host of Special Report every night at 6 p.m. on the Fox News Channel, America's newsman. Bret, I don't know if you were at the Pentagon when any kind of strategic defense was being talked about loudly, because you came in after Reagan and Brilliant Pebbles and all that, and before Golden Dome. But what did you make of the Golden Dome rollout, given that you've got the Pentagon chops from earlier in your career?
Well, I think, Hugh, good afternoon. I think it was bold. In other words, it painted a picture of what it would look like once completed, and there is a commitment by this president to do it. I think that there's a lot of questions still about how much it'll cost and what is its effectiveness and what does it look like. I have the CEO of Lockheed Martin on the show tonight, and we'll be talking about Golden Dome and other projects, but primarily that, and how realistic, how fast, all of those things. There was a lot of strategic, when I was covering the Pentagon, talk about, planning for asymmetric warfare, planning for not big armies, but special ops. And you saw that in the Rumsfeld era. He was very high on showing the pictures of the CIA operatives on horseback and the special ops guys in the early days of Afghanistan steering in guided missiles, and said that was the future of warfare. So they started to map that out while also looking to the east and what China and Asia was going to provide.
We're going to have to record and steal that interview with the Lockheed Martin guy on Special Report tonight, because I'm very interested in Golden Dome back from my Reagan days, and I believe there is no more abroad. The hypersonic can be here in, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, something like that. And I don't know if it won't make it deployed, I don't think, by the end of my career, but it ought to be up and operating at least at a 90% level like Iron Dome by the end of yours, Bret, and that will be a good thing. Let me play for you. The president made a lot of news on Sunday, so I want to run through it with you very quickly. Here's his comments on Vladimir Putin, cut number 5.
Yeah, I'll give you an update. I'm not happy with what Putin's doing. He's killing a lot of people, and I don't know what the hell happened to Putin. I've known him a long time, always gotten along with him, but he's sending rockets into cities and killing people, and I don't like it at all, okay? We're in the middle of talking, and he's shooting rockets into Kiev and other cities. I don't like it at all.
Bret, I think this is significant. What do you think?
I think it's significant, too. I think it's a turning point. I think the president's not saying that unless, things have changed. And what that means as far as, stepping up sanctions, whether it's banking, whether it's oil, whether it's something else, it seems like something else is coming. Now, Russia's response was to step up a drone attack inside Ukraine, and also to say that the president was emotional and and the response from Medvedev was kind of flippant. So I think you're in the middle of a big change here that may change the trajectory of what we've been seeing.
I saw Chancellor Merz today say that he is going to remove any restrictions on the use of weapons that Germany provides Ukraine, but I don't know that they provide ATACMS like we do. Do you expect the United States to follow suit, Brett Baer?
I think so. I don't think that the weapons have stopped flowing. I think that there was an effort to analyze where they were all going, but I don't think they ever stopped. And if this is the case, I don't think they will stop. I think there was a plan in a ceasefire to put a halt on everything, but I don't think it's stopping right now. At least that's what I'm tracking from the Pentagon and the White House. And so you've got a different scenario. And if we really, and I asked this to the president while we were in Abu Dhabi, if you really put the screws to Putin, and I had to kind of go back at it a number of times, he said he was open to doing that if they couldn't reach a deal. It doesn't seem, Hugh, like they're reaching a deal.
No, it doesn't. That was he's not very flippant about world leaders unless he's really, as he said, he doesn't know what happened to him. He did say this in the same presser avail, cut number 6, about Iran and Hamas. Cut number 6.
Talks with Iran yesterday and today, and let's see what happens. But I think we could have some good news on the Iran front. Likewise with Hamas on Gaza. We want to see if we can stop that. And Israel, we've been talking to them, and we want to see if we can stop that whole situation.
Now, Ambassador Oren just told me, Brett Baer, that the president has said you got a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, a month. I don't think he'll actually bring any pressure to bear on Israel if they're about executing a final operative plan to get the hostages out and destroy the tunnels. What did you make of that offhanded comment about Hamas, and especially about the Iran deal, about which the Ayatollah Khamenei hasn't said anything good?
Yeah. I do sense that there's more optimism inside the administration about Iran. Now, in conservative circles, there's more fear about that it becomes Obama 2.0, JCPOA. And I think that, there's real fear about that, but that the administration is thinking they're going in the right direction. So that's what I hear. As far as Hamas, I think you saw Steve Witkoff's statements pushing back on Hamas. I don't think it's as close as they say, and I think Israel's getting really tired of waiting on hostages. So they're continuing with their operations.
I think so, too. Last subject, Brett Baer, the one big, beautiful bill. The president said this, cut number 1 on Sunday.
The one big, beautiful bill, and it is a big, beautiful bill. And so I think the Senate is going to get there. I hope they're going to get there. I think they're going to have changes. Some will be minor and some will be, fairly significant. But we've been working with the House all the way up. They've been working together. And the Speaker has been working with the leader of the Senate. And, they've done a great job. John Thune and Mike Johnson have done a fantastic job. They've been working together all the way up. So hopefully that'll be fine.
So, Brett, I listened to Shelley Moore Capito on the Ruthless podcast today, and she said the Senate has to put their imprint on this, but that they've been very deferential to the House up until now, but there are many senators who worry about rural hospitals. And she said rural hospitals about 10 times. So I think that might be the key thing. What do you hear about this one big, beautiful bill?
Yeah, I think it's not as beautiful, and it's definitely big, but it's got some marks on it. And, obviously conservatives are swallowing it if they vote for it, because it adds to the deficit and the debt over time. Obviously, it solves the tax problem and not a massive tax increase for the the first Trump tax cuts to be sunsetted. So I think there is probably motivation. There's probably some momentum to get this through, but there probably will be changes. And whether the House can stomach those changes, the ping pong match would be interesting to watch.
Brett Bear, I'll be watching tonight because I'm very interested in what the Lockheed Martin guy says about Golden Dome and what they're doing. And I'm assuming it's a guy. It might be a gal. I don't know who runs Lockheed Martin, but
There's a guy, yeah.
Okay, I'll be watching tonight on Special Report at 6 o'clock across the United States Eastern Time. Brett Bear, thank you for joining me. Hey, I want to tell everyone out there, I appreciate all of you who supported us in our Memorial Day fundraiser for the fund.org. If you missed it, it's over at Hugh Hewitt. .com. You can also go to the website, to the podcast, Highly Concentrated Hugh. It's been put there. The whole show is at YouTube as well. And I appreciate everything you do for the fund. That's our 20th Memorial Day show for the fund. It's our 40th show overall. They are not sponsors of the show. We do that to give back. And we're very thankful for all of you who help those 35,000 veterans who have been wounded, and we do it on Memorial Day. We know Memorial Day is for the fallen, but we want to help the people who lost comrades. Often, in many of the veterans I talked to yesterday, are still mourning the loss of their buddies and their battle buddies in the accidents that hurt them so badly, and I appreciate it. I really, genuinely appreciate it. Like I appreciate the people who support Angel Tree. Angel Tree is out there sending kids to camp. And we're on Memorial Day. So they're doing their planning. They got their scoreboard out right now, meaning they're keeping track of how many kids have been subsidized, how many scholarships they have, how much money they've raised. Because they can only do so many weeks and fill so many bunks based on how many counselors they can pay. The counselors, you can get a lot of volunteers, but you got to pay out some people. You got to have doctors and nurses on site. You've got to run the electricity. You got to prepare the food. It costs money to send a kid to camp. Very rare that you can get a kid to camp for $200, but Angel Tree makes it happen. Please call them at 888-206-2764. 888-206-2764. Or go over to HughHewitt.com at my website. You will see a banner at the top that you can't miss. It's kids going camping. Just click there. If you can't do 200, do 100. If you can do 400, thank you on behalf of 2 children whose lives you will change. Angel Tree does a wonderful job getting those kids to camp and giving them a wonderful week away from, well, the difficulty of having mom or dad in jail. Thank you for having a generous heart. Made it to my first long weekend with Consumer Cellular, and it's fabulous. You should make the switch. You should save money. You should have savings without sacrifice with Consumer Cellular. Their phone number is 1-800-411-4454. 1-800-411-4454. And if you go to consumercellular.com/Hugh and you're a new customer, you will get $5 credit on your first 5 monthly invoices. Visit consumercellular.com/Hugh for details on that special offer. Now, let me tell you what you can also do. You can keep your number or get a new number. You can take all your data with you or leave it all behind. You can start fresh. You can have a second phone, whatever it is. But here's the key. Their target demo are 50 years and older because they have plans that aren't unlimited data. They do have unlimited data, all right? You can have unlimited data, 2 lines, $60 a month. And that's cheaper than big cellular. If you think you need that kind of data, and some people over 50 like me do, because I live on the web and I'm just doing news, but you may not be that person, and you may not be on Bleacher Report following the live broadcast of the Guardians game. That might not be you. But if you're a normal 50-year-old, you're not using 10 gigs a month. So get 10 gigs a month and save us a lot of money. Maybe you don't use it much at all and you only need 5 gigs a month. Talk to the people at Consumer Cellular. Do not forego your savings without sacrifice. You can have savings without sacrifice, but you got to call first. 800-411-4454. 800-411-4454. One more time, 1-800-411-4454. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, you will see it right there at the bottom of the line, but if you don't, 1-800-411-4454. Now, I was listening to Ruthless Podcast this morning on my Rumble, on my Trundle, not a Rumble. And that reminds me, Relief Factor. Boy, did I need it this morning. Did 7 miles yesterday after all the grandkids departed to their various remote locations where I will talk to them a lot. But they were here, all 7 of them, and 4 of them are under 3. And I'm getting all mixed up now. I've got a 13-year-old, an 11-year-old, a 5-year-old, 2 3-year-olds, and 2 infants. So the infants don't weigh very much, right? That's not hard. The 3-year-olds are like a ton of brick because they do funny things and they give you headbutts. Headbutts, relief factor might help you with a headbutt. I don't know. T-Rex Teddy jumps. He just jumps. If you're lying on the couch, he comes at you full steam and just sails into you. Genghis Kate is not so Genghis Katie. She can read. And kindergarten, God bless you. Because a Genghis Kate who can read is a Genghis Kate who is not bent on, exploring every crevice of the studio, destroying every book in the shelf, that sort of stuff. She's gone back to reading and coloring, so I'm very, very pleased with kindergarten. The Artful Dodger was at his artful dodgiest best, and the scholar read and studied because she's 13 and studying French, and so there's not too much. But picking up those 3-year-olds and the 7 miles to Arlington and back yesterday, that's when you need your relief factor. So remember, 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief, 1-800 and the number 4 and the word relief, or go right to their website and find the starting pack offer, 3-week starter pack, $19.95. Last pitch this segment, and it's not a pitch. It's really illusion. It's an alert that you need to go to taxcutsnow.com and join the fight. As I was saying to Brett Baer, I listened to the Ruthless podcast on my 3 miles day. Only 3 today, because 7 yesterday, and up and down some hills at Arlington, and I was a little fagged out. And so only 3 this morning. But I do believe that the best thing I did this morning was listen to the Ruthless podcast. And the Ruthless podcast best part was Shelley Moore Capito, who's really a fine representative senator from West Virginia, friend of the program, friend of mine. And she was on explaining what the senators are going to be looking for. They got to put their mark on the House bill. They have a different set of priorities. And she mentioned rural hospitals 20 times. And maybe that's an exaggeration. But I got the message, Senator Capito. Rural hospitals matter to a lot of Republican senators, like Josh Hawley's been out there talking about this. And rural hospitals depend often on Medicaid. So they got to find a way to make it work for the Senate and to make it work for the House. What you need to find a way is to get the message to the senators that tax cuts now matters to you. You understand the complexity of the bill. It's the one big, beautiful bill, so it's very, very complex. But you want to go and say, okay, we got to get this done because I don't want my taxes to go up 25% or more next year if the tax cuts expire from Donald Trump's first tax cut. So head to taxcutsnow.com. Thank you, our friends at Job Creators Network that sponsor this. They're doing yeoman's work with the other groups. Taxcutsnow.com. I want you to know, by the way, that the House, one of the provisions I did not notice, and I'm very much in favor of this, universities map out new investment strategies to deal with tax hike on endowments. Now, they did it's a graduated income tax for private universities with large endowments. Ranges from 1.4% to 21%. Now, they ought to leave every college alone. I know of 2, Grove City and Hillsdale. They ought not to be taxed at all because they take no federal money and they never have. They don't even take student loans with federal guarantees. They just won't do it. So they shouldn't be taxed. But private universities taking tax money are going to be taxed at 1.4% of their endowment to 21% of their endowment, in line with what U.S. corporations pay. And there are only 8 colleges with endowments of $25 billion or more. Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford, MIT, and there are a lot of other places with endowments of $2 million per U.S. student, which may get places like Caltech swept in, which only has an endowment of $4.3 billion. Now, that's a lot, but they have very few students, because if you go to Caltech, you're building rocket ships. And schools with an endowment between $750,000 and $1.25 million, would be taxed at 7%. I'm not sure I would go for that, but that's what they're going to hammer out. They're going to hammer it out. Donald Trump talked about Harvard on Sunday, and I want you to hear what he had to say. But remember, taxcutsnow.com. Here's Donald Trump on, actually, it's talking about Harvard. Donald Trump, cut number 4.
Look, part of the problem with Harvard is that there are about 31%, almost 31% of foreigners coming to Harvard. We give them billions of dollars, which is ridiculous. We do grants, which we're probably not going to be doing much grants anymore to Harvard. But they're 31%, but they refuse to tell us who the people are. We want to know who the people. Now, a lot of the foreign students we wouldn't have a problem with. I'm not going to have a problem with foreign students, but it shouldn't be 31%. It's too much because we have Americans that want to go there and to other places, and they can't go there because you have 31% foreign. Now, no foreign.
They're remarkably high. I want to know how many of those are from Chinese communist land. How many are from the PRC? Because those are the first people to send back. Because we are in a Cold War with China, and I don't know why we're educating their people. News alert. Look forward to tomorrow. I'm going to be talking with David Mamet, America's greatest living playwright, one of the greats. I've interviewed David a few times when he's had previous books out or just for kicks and giggles. And this new book, The Disenlightenment, took me a while to figure out that it is not unlike Montaigne's essays. It's sort of like Joseph Epstein collection of essays, but not, because it's got a through line about how we barely avoided going over a cliff in the last election. A lot of it about politics, but there is a little love for his hometown of Chicago, which struck me. In Des Dem Does, the essay is Des Dem Does. My small South Side Chicago neighborhood gave us Larry Ellison of Oracle, Seymour Hersh of the New York Times, Sherry Lansing who ran Paramount Pictures, and just over the color line, Shelby Steele and Malcolm X. And the blues, the indigenous music that came up the Mississippi, became and remains the music of the world. Chicagoans invented the skyscraper, and the architectural geniuses Adler and Sullivan, Holabird and Root, and Frank Lloyd Wright felt the identity and beauty and utility that created what was called the first American city. He also goes on to note, the South Side came up with improvisational stand-up comedy, transformative American literature, and the big city machine perfected by Richard Daley. And that's all true. But he didn't get in Pope Leo from Bronzeville, which is a suburb of Dolton, and St. Mary of the Assumption Parish. I'll talk to him about that. I think in the second edition, he's got to add Pope Leo. So that's the south side of Chicago. I'm just alerting you that I want you to listen tomorrow, because Mamet, when he does come out and talk, is always fabulous. I've got like 20 pages of notes for a 200-page book. I'll never get through it, but it's just fun to talk to a genius, and he's a genius with words. News story this afternoon, which you're going to see. Michael Oren denied this. Wall Street Journal headline, chaos looting Mars start of new aid distribution and system. The U.S. and Israeli-backed plan aims to deliver aid directly to the Palestinian through private security companies. And it began normally, but about 4:30 p.m. in the afternoon, a poorly constructed gate collapsed. Large crowds tried to push through the narrow entrance. Chaos resulted. The Times of Israel reports, Gazans overrun strips, new aid center. Operators say distribution is resumed. And, okay, first day, they got to get the food there. What Dr. Oren said, whoever controls the food controls Gaza. Hamas has always controlled the food. They hijacked all the trucks. Now U.S. and Israel figured out how to get them out of the picture, and Israel has a new plan for Gaza. They're going to take and hold 75% of the city. They're going to go down into the tunnels and blow up those tunnels where they're taking and holding it. They're going to rescue hostages and recover bodies when they can. And in response, the other story from the Times of Israel, Hamas executes 4 Gazans it accuses of looting aid as it tries to assert control. Emphasis on the word tries here. What has happened? when they launched their surprise attack on Hamas, Israel did a couple of weeks ago, they caught the last remaining really made man in Hamas, Mohammed Sinwar, the brother of the mastermind and boss of Hamas in Gaza, Yahya Sinwar. They caught him underneath one of their hospitals in one of their command and control, and they caught him with every other leader of Hamas. Big meeting. Like the five families got together in New York, and somebody bombed them. Well, here they had all of the remaining leadership of Hamas, and they blew them up because the IDF is getting better at finding them. Some collateral damage, some innocent civilians, no doubt killed. Israel does not deny that, but so careful a war have they waged that the loss of civilian per the loss of combatant is 1-to-1, which is a record in war, absolutely a record in war. And the war goes on. And the new war plan leaked. They have gone into neighborhoods, killed Hamas terrorists, and retreated. And they've killed about 23,000 Hamas terrorists. That was the estimate I read in the big leak yesterday. But I think it was a purposeful leak because it had lots of details that you think, oh, the IDF wants us to know this. They're methodically going to put Gazans about whom they are unsure into 3 neighborhoods, and they're going to take over everything else and destroy the infrastructure below. And then Gazans can return in onesies and twosies and families to what's left of central Gaza City and 2 other areas, and Israel staying put in the rest of Gaza until and unless all of Hamas gives up the hostages and leaves. I think the plan will work. We will see. I hope you had a great Memorial Day. I'm sure Vic Mattis did, because the latest edition of Getting Hammered was about getting hammered. Hello, Vic. How are you?
Hello, Hugh. I'm doing just fine, and happy belated Memorial Day.
Now, I did not listen to the actual podcast because one of your cocktail-focused podcasts, and I don't drink unless I'm at sea and single malt scotches at hand, and then only very little because I have no capacity for alcohol. But tell me, what did you talk about for an hour about drinks?
Yes, as you noticed, if you look at the timeline there, we managed to stretch that show out for an hour. The tasting episodes are always tricky, I think. We might be done in 10 minutes, but no, it was a variety of subjects. We talked about my son's summer reading list selections, books you can choose from, big books and small books, and that was very interesting. And then we talked about James Comey's 8647 snafu.
Oh, you did other stuff?
Oh, we did.
Oh, it was badly titled. I thought it was just a drinking show.
No, we talked about topics that were in between. We were drinking in between different topics, I should say.
Oh, well, then I got to go back and listen. How much did you drink? You know, we don't allow that on the air, by the way. We have a alcohol-free.
Yeah. Yes, it's. Well, I think we had about, I don't know, maybe 6 cans plus a shot of vodka. But just little tastes of each one, samples. So, you know, it's like what you would call a flight, but it's a very quick flight because we taped on the early side, and I have a full day of work I have to get to, Hugh. I don't function.
Well, I'll bet you that work was really reviewable. Were you editing anything that day?
Yes, it all went very smoothly, I have to say.
I'll bet it did.
When I woke up.
I'll bet it did. So now, because I didn't listen to the episode, I'm going to engage in Catholic talk with you. I was very pleased to be a proxy at the baptism of my granddaughter, my infant granddaughter, on Sunday. And when you're a proxy, that's when a godparent is abroad and can't stand in, and so you stand in. So I stood in. I want to know, what do you think is the average time of a Catholic baptism that you've been to that's a standalone baptism independent of the Mass?
Oh, I don't know. I would say 15 to 30 minutes at most.
Okay, we went an hour and 15 minutes. And there are a lot of kids. There were 5 babies, so that's part of it, right? 5 babies.
Okay.
And we had a homily. When do you get homilies at baptisms?
Yeah, if you're having a full Mass and then there's the baptism, sometimes it's in the middle of the Mass or at the end, you might get one. I mean, the average length of a homily shouldn't be more than 15 to 30 minutes. You got a real treat there, and it probably tested the patience of the babies. The
babies were great. The parents weren't so hot, but the babies were great. And the old folks who were back behind the parents were even less accommodating. But it was a great sermon, a great little homily about making a point. Now, this links me to my next question. Do you have bumper stickers on your car, Vic?
No, I do not. But here's one of the problems, Hugh. A lot of the cars these days, the fenders are no longer made of just straight on like metal. It's like fiberglass and things. So you have these magnet bumper stickers that are very handy these days because you can take them out if you're no longer using the car, selling it, or you were just leasing it. They don't stick because it's magnets, and we're not making cars that are made of heavy metal and steel anymore. So I
Oh,
do not. I will say this: my son has one bumper sticker on the car that was a hand-me-down, and it's free Jimmy Lai.
oh, free Jimmy Lai? Well, that's a great
Yeah.
bumper sticker. Now, what the priest's very good homily was, baptism is about obtaining your Catholic identity. That's the most important identity as a Christian. And today we live in an identity crisis driven world, and people put all sorts of bumper stickers on to establish their identity. Schools, causes, coexist things. And I never really thought of that, but I'm not a bumper sticker guy. Are you a bumper sticker guy? Even if they worked?
No, I did once have a bumper sticker, Bush Quail 92, and I drove that around proudly for years.
That's a throwback.
That is a
That's a big
throwback. It was a
throwback.
classy bumper sticker, Hugh. It was a classy bumper sticker.
All right. Now I want to go to my Catholic talk. We've had 2 weeks of Leo. What do you think?
So far, so good. I know he talks about, the late Pope Francis, may he rest in peace, and continuing his legacy and reaching out and helping the poor and the importance of the climate. That's all fine by me. I don't have the same feeling of nervousness that he's going to start, issuing screeds against the general broad evils of capitalism and things that the late Pope Francis had done, and including lack of clarity when it came to Catholic doctrine. I do hope. I think we're all waiting for him to say, "Hey, you know what? It's okay to have Latin Mass again because we're all in this together." That hasn't quite happened yet. People are trying to read the tea leaves, and when I say tea leaves, I mean they're trying to, get feedback from Pope Leo's older brother, who is very outspoken on things. But the siblings can disagree on a number of things. I have it
Oh
on good
yeah.
authority that the Pope was a reader of the Dispatch.
Oh, really?
So I have heard. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's a very good thing. Now, Vic, tell me another thing, though. At your parish, what's the general mood? Because when you have 5 families having baptisms, you've got 5 sets of parents, 5 sets of godparents or proxies. You got a whole bunch of people. Some of them are Catholic, some are not Catholic, but you kind of talk Catholic talk with everyone. Generally, an upbeat group of people. Pretty happy with Pope Leo. What did you hear this Sunday?
Yeah. Same thing. I mean, it's positive. It's very important to keep him in our prayers, both his health and good intentions, as we say. So, yeah, I haven't heard any pushback. And I go to the parish I go to now is fairly conservative, and everybody's very supportive. I haven't heard any concerns. I have to tell you that much. I mean, there's a lot of excitement that we share this commonality that he is an American, the first American Pope from the Midwest. So, I mean, he's got the backing right. It's a honeymoon period, Hugh. We'll see how long that lasts. I mean,
Have you
again,
heard any extended? I can't pick up his accent yet. I haven't heard enough yet. Have you?
no, I haven't, but his Italian sounds fantastic. And Spanish, he's very fluent. I like that. And Latin.
Oh, well, he lived in Peru forever, so his Spanish is going to be good. Does Peruvian Spanish match up with Filipino Spanish?
Slightly. I mean, there are obviously differences, and Tagalog is its own thing. Mostly, it's a mishmash, really, Hugh. It's a mishmash, but that's
All
like
right.
our Pope.
All right. He is a mishmash. Vic Mattis, I'll go back and listen. Next time, tell people there's other stuff than the taste in, and I'll listen to it. Getting Hammered. It's available at every podcast store, outlet, and platform everywhere. I forgot to play one excerpt of Donald Trump's Sunday presser where he talked about the U.S. Steel deal, cut number 2.
Another question question. You announced on Friday about U.S. Steel and Nippon Steel.
Yeah.
What will the ownership structure look like? What made you satisfied about that?
It'll be controlled by the United States. Otherwise, I wouldn't make the deal. I went to the unions, to all of the local unions. They all wanted it. And I'm doing it because all of the congressmen came in, about 5 of them, and the others, I understand, are in concurrence. And they asked that I do it. Everybody seems to want it. And we'll see. I mean, we'll see what the final is. But they're going to invest billions of dollars in steel. And it's a good company. Nissan's a very good company. We'll see. But it's an investment, and it's a partial ownership, but it'll be controlled by the USA.
All right, so that's good news for the steel workers who are worried about that deal cratering. Scott Bessent, our Secretary of the Treasury, has made everyone very happy with his performance thus far, on Fox News talking about Doge cut number 7.
Because it's like I told Elon, I said, Elon, you're under fire because you've moved people's cheese. And he said, well, it's the American people's cheese, and it doesn't belong to these people. And again, that's why I wanted the American people to meet Sam. We're going to bring some more Doge people forward to actually hear their stories, see what's being done, because the entrenched interests, the consultants, the Democrats, mainstream media, they just want to blow this project out of the water. And it's important because I keep saying this is the opposite of government efficiency, not elimination, not extinction. Sam and his crew are making it more efficient to work for the American people. So what's wrong with it working better, cheaper, faster, and with more privacy?
Nothing. Cut number 8, Christine Noem on Fox News from her visit to Israel.
The president will never accept a nuclear-capable Iran. He will never accept them having nuclear weapons and building the capacity to that. The intelligence information that they have and that Israel has and they share with the United States and that we also have and are using for those conversations is critically important. So I think the message to the American people is we have a president that wants peace, but also a president that will not tolerate nuclear Iran capability in the future. They will not be able to get a nuclear weapon, and this president will not allow it. But he also wants to be on.
Good to hear from Christine Noem. One more cut. General Kellogg on Fox News, latest on Ukraine, Russia, cut number 9.
The only guy that can do this is President Trump. I really believe that. I've said that repeatedly on air. Right. But based on his personality, who he is, he's the one who can bring peace to the region. It's not going to be easy. Negotiations are never easy, but there's nowhere this war is going to end through violence, through killing of soldiers on either side. Right. It's going to come down to negotiation. That's where you have to be.
But I think we all got a realism dose today from Putin's indifference to the American attempt to solve the war. Donald Trump was very much in earnest. He brought Zelensky to the table, and Putin bought fusillades of missiles, the most ever fired in a 2-day period in this war, and the single largest night in the war. Putin not serious. So harm the Ukrainians. If you listened last hour, I asked Brett Baer about Golden Dome. He has Lockheed Martin's CEO on tonight. He's got a piece of that. I also had Senator Kevin Cramer on last week to talk about it, and we got into it. But now I've got Admiral Mark Montgomery, Senior Fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracy, and he knows this stuff. So, Admiral, welcome. I hope you had a great Memorial Day. I was over at Arlington. I don't know if you were, but always think of my friends from the military like you and Jerry, et cetera, on days when I'm over there. A lot of your friends, I'm sure, are interred and resting there. So thank you for joining me on the day after a long weekend. Tell me what you thought about the president's rollout of Golden Dome.
Well, first, thank you very much for having me, and I agree on Memorial Day, and Arlington's a beautiful place this time of year. Look, Golden Dome needed to happen. I'm glad President Trump had the vision to push this and make it one of his primary Department of Defense initiatives, kick it off along with shipbuilding. And I appreciate the Congress putting it in the reconciliation bill. This had to happen. China and Russia have spent the last decade moving ahead of us and their ability to conduct prompt strike with hypersonic, ballistic, and cruise missiles that could reach the U.S. homeland. And the gap isn't, do we have more than them on the offensive side? The gap is that they're developing an offensive capability, conventionally equipped offensive capability, for which we have no defense. And you should never do that when you're competing with a first mover authoritarian state like China or Russia.
No, Admiral, I tell people there is no more abroad. That the whole concept of John Adams, we should not go abroad seeking monsters to slay, no longer applies because there is no abroad. A Pearl Harbor can happen in 15 minutes. Do you agree with that?
I do. And so does every president since 9/11. If you look at every national security strategy or every national defense strategy since the September 11th attacks, we have highlighted that the defense of the homeland against these external threats is our number one priority. And it's no longer just counterterrorism or even issues on the border, although those are serious issues. We now have both cyber threats and missile defense threats that allow China, Russia, and other authoritarian states to bring the fight to the American homeland, by either through cyber or missile defense, missile attack means, destroying our critical infrastructures, our military mobility, both our national security and economic security.
Now, Kim Jong-un today declared that Golden Dome is provocative and will lead to space war. Your thoughts on that?
My thoughts is it must take an extra 3 days for things to be translated into Korean, because the Chinese said the same thing 5 days ago after the president's initial announcement. So I'll say productively. And Kim Jong-un may have been, caught up in the personal investigation he's leading about why his destroyer is laying on its side after the side saddle launch that failed a few days ago. But the fact that Kim Jong-un and President and Chairman Xi's apparatus are telling us we're wrong kind of validates in my mind that we're probably right. But beyond that, I know we're right, Hugh, because we need to have this system to defend our homeland.
So talk to me about degrees of complexity, comparing it to, for example, our Columbia-class boomers, which we're producing. We're behind, but we're producing them. Where are we on the implementation phase of Golden Dome? How long to roll out something that might deter an enemy or make them think twice?
So I'll take that in two parts. There's a complexity issue, and there's a how long is this going to take issue. The complexity issue, look, the Columbia class is a complex undertaking, but every element of it has generally been done in a previous submarine class or has been really modeled well as they were getting ready for this, decades-long modernization. So what's challenging the Columbia is our supply chain, our workforce. It's not the engineer. I do not believe it's purely engineering challenges, although there are some. This missile defense challenge is unique. We have not fought with interceptors from space. We have not built, 800 to 1,000, satellite network lattice together to, detect, track, and then engage adversary, cruise and hypersonic missiles from space. So, from my perspective, this is going to take 7 to 10 years. So probably it's on about the same timeline as Columbia to get to full operational capability. We'll get initial operational capability during President Trump's time in office. But what he described, that full operational capability to attempt to defend the whole homeland, that is not happening in the next 3.5 years. It'll happen in the next 7 to 10 years. And that will be with some great engineering work.
So, Admiral, explain for the Steelers fans, how is it supposed to work? I mean, really break it down to what are we going to be seeing happen?
Well, the first thing for a Steelers fan is you need a good quarterback. You need a good leader. And unlike the Steelers, the president found one. And that's General Mike Gutlein from the Space Force. So you need a single leader. What Senator Angus King, my old boss, would say is one throat to choke. And the president now has that. It's General Mike Gutlein. Pete Hegseth has that. And then that leader will work across the services, across the defense industrial base, across the new startups, and most importantly, with the Missile Defense Agency, the agency where we've stuffed several hundred missile defense engineers to build an architecture, to contract with the companies to get us there. We're lucky, Hugh, in the sense that, look, people criticize Elon Musk, but I'll tell you, SpaceX has unilaterally driven down the cost of space launch 90+% over the last 20 years. That's going to make this feasible. So we have these defense industrial base companies. So to me, the big issue is you have a good leader, a good engineering plan, and then you execute that plan, to a budget.
How many different places in the United States will see dedicated space bases that are integrated into a Golden Dome system, Admiral Montgomery?
So a number. I think there's two different ways to look at this. There are going to be a lot of spaceports that support launch because we have to be launching quite a bit. Many of them exist already, but more will be built. There'll also be ports that handle what I think will be tethered aerostats or dirigibles with high quality firing quality track radars. Raytheon, the Navy's had them. Lockheed Martin has built them for the Navy already that track hypersonics. Raytheon just produced one for the Army that tracks hypersonics. We want to get them up at 20, 30, 40, 60,000 feet where they have phenomenal ranges, right? These long range radars to help us track these missiles. So you're going to see these spaceports and near spaceports developed all over the United States. Look, I think there'll also be, 3 to 5 long range detection radars, similar to what Australia has and what Canada is building. Canada will build 1 or 2 or 3. We'll build 3 or 4 or 5, and that'll cover that whole northern approaches to the country where many of these cruise missiles come from.
Now, and how much of this architecture has been at least begun in Israel, and do we expect their laser technology to become part of our Golden Dome?
So they have aerostats, the Israelis. So of course, that's a U.S. company, and it was built by the U.S. Missile Defense Agency with the Israelis, and so some of that technology will come back over to us. I don't know that we're going to be importing Arrow or David Sling, their cruise missile ballistic missile systems, because we have equivalent systems. And the problems both of those systems have, which is you're taking off from terrestrial, so the cost per launch starts in the millions. In both cases, when I compare them to, say, THAAD and Patriot, which also start in the millions, I think we'll be looking for space-based systems. Now, what I do love what you mentioned is directed energy. I do think directed energy or lasers will be coming. So the Iron Beam, which the U.S. funded through the last Israel supplemental that passed with the Ukraine supplemental last spring, that money from that will drive developments in Israel. There's equivalent money be going into the U.S. Army systems and the U.S. Navy systems. From somewhere there, we will begin to get more directed energy. The kind of energy from space is going to be slightly different. And so that technology will come over and then have to be worked. I think we'll have both kinetic effectors, that is rockets or missiles that drop out of space, in addition to eventually some kind of directed energy or microwave energy that comes from space against weapon systems.
Well, that's the last question. Does the directed energy generator, speaking in Ohio terms here, the machine, is that aloft or is that on the ground going up?
No, sir. I think the most effective systems are going to be ones that come from space. Now, look, there's a problem with generating power up there. We'll work through that. But if you do it from the ground, you're having to burn through a lot of pollution, a lot of atmosphere to get to the target. I still think you'll have that for last ditch defenses. And I think you're going to see the development of directed energy weapons and microwave and lasers that really help us over the next few years with our ground and naval forces.
Admiral Mark Montgomery, United States Navy, retired. Thank you for breaking it down for us. I continue to look forward to more on that. Bethany Mandel is co-founder of the Mom Wars, which you can get on Substack. She is also the author of Stolen Youth and co-author of Stolen Youth and a John Androzek fan. So we saw each other at the John Androzek concert a week ago tonight, but I didn't have any kids with me. How did the children like the show, Bethany?
They loved it, but perhaps not as much as my oldest daughter loved meeting you. Have you ever seen an 11-year-old look more excited to meet you in your life?
No, except my grandchildren. They're always happy because there's $20 involved for them at the end of the visit. They know that. But I was impressed that they even knew who I was, so that's nice. Why did you take them? I'm so interested.
I take my kids to all this stuff. I think it's a perk of being my kid. They get some of the negatives too. They get the people whose kids are not allowed to play with them because of who their parents are. So I feel like they should get the perks of being our kids too. But John is incredible on Israel, and I thought it was really important for them to hear someone who wasn't Jewish. I knew that John was going to talk about the hostages and, politics and everything. And when you go to concerts nowadays, you get a lecture, and so it was really nice for them to at least hear something that we as a family agreed with.
Yeah, that is. You do get a lecture. Last time I went to a Joan Baez concert, it was during the Kavanaugh hearings, and we got a lot of anti-Kavanaugh stuff. So I'm used to it, and I'm not a shut up and sing person. I don't mind it, but I do like it when it makes sense, like John made sense. But in terms of their schedule, it goes to about what 9:30, 10 o'clock show. It's a quartet, so it's a different kind. Not rock and roll. It's not going to blow their eardrums out. What were they like the next day? That's a late night, isn't it?
Not for them. I mean, they're homeschooled, so they're up late anyway. But Seth brings our oldest son, our 10-year-old, to like heavy metal rock shows and punk bands. Like they're out until midnight at shows on like a Tuesday night on the reg.
That's pretty wild. Okay, kudos to Seth. I'll ask him about that. Let's turn to the news. First of all, President Trump spoke about Iran on Sunday. I don't know if you heard it. I want you to play it so that everyone listening to the segment hears it as well. This is what he said, cut number 6.
Talks with Iran yesterday and today, and let's see what happens. But I think we could have some good news on the Iran front. Likewise with Hamas on Gaza. We want to see if we can stop that. And Israel, we've been talking to them, and we want to see if we can stop that whole situation.
Now, my reaction to that, Bethany, was, uh-oh, because the Ayatollah Khamenei said, we're not making any progress at all. Witkoff came out, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, and said, Hamas is lying about the deal we proposed. So maybe the president was watching the news and not getting briefed. What do you think about what he said?
I'm not sure. I mean, I've been talking to a lot of my Israeli friends about the Iran situation, and there's a lot of concern that there's a window of time that is shrinking very rapidly where Israel does not have the capability to defend itself in the air because Israel knocked all of their defenses out. And there's a lot of concern that they're trying to wait out the clock basically until they can rebuild those air defenses. And by that point, I mean, I think we're going to get to that point inevitably, and it's a pretty scary proposition that the president seems to be going along with that plan.
Or is doing the 4D chess stuff and talking softly and carrying a big stick. Let me talk to you about Hamas in Gaza. Over the weekend, it was leaked that Israel is going to occupy 75% of the Gaza Strip, destroy the infrastructure beneath it, try and get the hostages out and the bodies returned. But they're not going to give the 75% of the Gaza Strip back ever, as far as I can see. What did you make of the leak of that plan?
I mean, I think it was a good move. Whomever leaked it. There's been a lot of confusion in Israel, and on my end too, over here. Like, what is the game plan? What is the end game? They just did the biggest call up of reserves in the history of this war, and the fact that we're already 600 days in, and they've just done that. People are starting to very loudly grumble in Israel, like, what are we doing? These are men who have jobs, who have families, who have been on hold for the last 19, 20 months at this point, and they want to hear a plan. And I think it was important for there to have been a plan projected out there into the world. And I hope it's true. I hope that this is the plan, because as it stands, like, the Gaza Strip cannot be taken over by Hamas. That's a non-starter. And at least we're hearing some semblance of an idea of what the plan is.
There are 5 divisions operating in Gaza, not reservists, but 5 of the standing divisions of the IDF. Are you surprised that they've thrown that many troops into this latest iteration of their war plan?
I'm not. I mean, they've decided that they need to take over the Strip, and it's not a small piece of real estate, and so they really do need to get in there. But they're also hoping that the military pressure can bring Hamas to the table in a way that it hasn't before. I think that the military pressure got the American-Israeli IDF soldier Idan Alexander. I think that was a direct result of that military pressure, was getting him home, and I hope that they're able to finally cohesively put an end to this, because this is the longest war in Israel's history by a mile, and it's gone on way, way too long.
Now, there are two stories from the Times of Israel and one from the Wall Street Journal. Hamas, Gazans overrun Strip's new aid center. Operators say distribution has resumed. Ambassador Oren told me it went pretty well today, all things considered, that Hamas is trying to disrupt the distribution of food because he who controls the food in Gaza controls Gaza. And then Hamas executes 4 Gazans accused of looting aid as it tries to assert control. I get the sense, whispers, leaves, tea leaves, Gaza's on its back. There's nobody left running it. I mean, Hamas is on its back. What do you think?
I'm hearing the same. I'm hearing that they're recruiting 12 and 13-year-old boys to be the militants because they've run out of men who will serve as Hamas militants. I do think they're on their back. The commentary podcast that they taped today with John Podhoretz and my husband Seth Mandel really laid it out. I mean, this is the last gasps, and I think the problem with a lot of these hostage negotiations is they don't have anyone left to talk to. They've killed everyone, and so it can be hard to negotiate with a ghost.
I think that's what's happened. When they got Mohammed Sinwar, they got the last name. I'm told there are 2 more names on longer lists, but I just think they're leaderless, headless, and that they're going to operate like guerrillas and not really have an infrastructure, but that means going into the tunnels. Let me close by asking you, have you heard about this book, The Disenlightenment by David Mamet?
No.
When you get a hold of this, I can't wait to talk to you about it, and to Seth. He's very hard on American Jews, of which he is one. Very, very hard. 79% of whom voted for Biden-Harris, and he says that was suicidal and that, thank you, blacks and Hispanics, for voting for Trump and putting him over. You saved the state of Israel. Agree, disagree?
I mean, you have to consider that there's Jews that actually live their faith, like Seth and I, and then there's people who, they have a Passover Seder once a year. That 79% is the latter.
Not enough. He said that's actually the key demographic in the future of American politics. I think he's right. Bethany Mandel can be followed on X at Bethany Shondark, and The Mom's Wars on Substack. Ty Lassiter is the CEO of Key City Capital, a sponsor of the Hugh Hewitt Show. And I've got to tell you a few things in addition to the fact that Key City Capital is a sponsor. I am an investor with Key City Capital. The fund that I invested with 2 years ago is closed. You can't get into it. I have to tell you, you have to be an accredited investor before you invest with Ty. And please read the prospectus before you do that. Before that, having said all that, Ty, I'm very happy with my investment. Tell me how many people come back a second time for a second investment with Key City.
Oh, goodness. We've got 750 investors now. And I think probably 400, there's about 460, 470 of them that have invested and reinvested again over the last 5 years or so. And so we've got a big turnout. Over the last 10 years, I've got 2 investors that did not reinvest with us at some point in totality of their working with us. So we've got a pretty good track record of having people come back and invest again.
Well, that's the best actual evidence of whether or not people like performance. KeyCityCapital.com/Hugh. KeyCityCapital.com/Hugh. Ty, last time we talked, you were building in Dallas and the fund was almost going to close. Did it close? Have you opened a new fund?
We opened a new fund at the beginning of the month. We did. We had a $5 million target for the first asset that we're putting in this new fund. We've already purchased the asset, and we hit 4.8 of the 5 million this month already, and it's the 27th. So we've got the commitments coming in to hit that 5 million. So we're already looking at what the next tranche is going to be. We have had huge excitement with just the uncertainty that we've seen in the marketplace over the last few months, and it's up and down and up and down. And I think we're up about 700 points today. So right now is the prime time to take some chips off the table, reallocate, diversify, put into something that's cash flowing, that's physically backed, that's not quite as cyclical as the market. and especially while we've got a president right now that is focused on the real estate market. And so we're taking huge advantage of that.
What is the tax advantage to an investor in Key City Capital, Ty?
That's a great question. So it's really it's a paper expense, and so when an investor invests with us, they earn a preferred rate of return. And what we do is on a quarterly basis, we do distributions of whatever cash flow is available. Those distributions first go to meet that preferred return. But really, any distribution that we make during the life cycle of the investment, up to about 12%, is going to be no tax liability against those distributions. Now, we don't normally hit 12%. I am not suggesting that by any means. Our normal right now, we're hitting about 4% with our new fund that we've got out right now. So 4% cash flow, the fund is going to earn about 16% annualized rate of return. So that 4% cash flow, investors are going to get that with no tax liability against that. So an investor that invests 100 grand, they're going to get about $1,000 a quarter, no tax disadvantage, no tax liability against that. That's cash to their pocket.
And how long does the average fund last until return of capital plus accrued profit?
Yep, that's our target's 5 years. We've got some funds right now that will run 7 years. We bought them early on in the cycle, and we're expecting to exit over the last couple of years. And inflation tells us, hey, let's hold on to the assets. So 7 years is the long side, and I've had funds that have exited as short as 2 years. That is not normal by any means, but our sweet spot is right in about 5 years is where we typically run at.
Now, I say accredited investor, but I also want to say to people, they're looking for investments of $100,000 or more, which is diversifying your retirement portfolio, which is why I did it. Do you find that that's normally your demo, 55 and older and preparing to retire?
Yeah, out of our 700 plus investors, our average investor age is right around 57 and a half, 58. We've got investors as young as 29, and we've got a couple of investors that are in their mid 90s. But that sweet spot is typically people that are within a couple of years of retiring, or maybe have just retired, and they're looking to really kind of diversify, and then also see some growth in their investment while getting cash flow still. They don't want to have to sell off stocks in order to recognize their cash for the month.
So I tell everyone who's listening, if you're interested in that kind of investment, go to keycitycapital.com/Hugh. Get the prospectus, read the prospectus. Remember, accredited investors only. It's a hot time in the apartment rental unit market right now, which is why I've got Kai coming on to do updates like this as people look around and get lots of pitches. I trust him. I invested with him. I think you can as well. Today, in Section 8, I even called in an expert, and I said, what about Section 8? Because the marker system, I mean, it's a mob, so there's not really a lot of desk help. I had a map. I had downloaded my app, found out exactly what section I was supposed to go to, Section 8, knew the grave, 5119, Harold Janura. And you know Janura. It's Jan's dad. The book is Turning Small Talk into Big Talk, and I've got it around here somewhere. It's a great graduation present, by the way, Turning Small Talk into Big Talk. And a couple of years ago, I learned that Jan, mom and dad, were buried at Arlington. He fought with Patton all the way across Europe. And I said, well, next time I go on Memorial Day, I will find his grave and take a picture of it on Memorial Day. So I found it, and it's at 5119EH. And I found Section 8. We found Section 8. Fetching Mrs. Hewitt was with me. And we came out of the entry. There's an entry point, and I made a little left instead of a little right. So it took me a while to get to Eisenhower Avenue, and then when you get down to Eisenhower Avenue, Section 8 is way over near the Pentagon, and it's a big section. And there is no rhyme or reason, my friends. No rhyme or reason. I'm sure if it hadn't been, the president was there at the same time, but he's up at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier with the vice president. And I believe Secretary Hegseth, I don't know who else was there. And there's an annual tradition, but we're not there for that. We walk there, park the car a good bit away, and we walk there, and we walk up and in, and we normally go wherever the headstone is or wherever the remains are. And Fetching Mrs. Hewitt's grandfather and grandmother are buried there, and we've been there. And we try and do that whenever we're in town, and it's always inspiring. There were a lot of families of the fallen recently. Very moving. In fact, we walked past a little girl hugging a headstone, and I assume, and with her mother and little brother, and I assume they lost their father. It could have been in Jordan in the last year, could have been in Abbey Gate, could have been any of the accidents that we've had, but their father's a hero, and it looked like an uncle was with him, and it was very touching, and there were many, many, many such families there yesterday, but not down in Section 8, which is an old section. I mean, I think there are 70 sections. Section 8 filled up a long time ago with World War II era veterans and those who served in World War II. But there's never bad time spent there because you're just aware of the immensity of the sacrifice. I took a picture of one headstone for Major Frederick Israel, United States Marine. Died in 1963, received the Navy Cross. Didn't know that when I took it. I chanced upon it from the back of the headstone, and it was Israel. I thought, wow, that's interesting. And I walked around to the front of the headstone, got his details, looked up Frederick Israel, and heroic, impressive man. And he's there with his wife, his spouse. And so you never don't learn something at Arlington. I recommend it highly if you're coming to the nation's capital. It's perhaps the most important place to visit. Lincoln Memorial is the most majestic. The Capitol is wonderful. The White House is wonderful. Washington Monument, you couldn't get me to go up in again because the lines are so long. I'm not going to do the stairs anymore. But Arlington is for everybody, and it's easy to move around in, and it's big, and it's a wonderful reminder of why we're here. For all of you who helped us with the fund yesterday, thank you. Thefund.org, thefund.org. If you missed yesterday's show, head over to Highly Concentrated Hugh on iTunes and Spotify. Wherever there are podcasts, Salem Podcast Network, you'll find Highly Concentrated Hugh, which is the show. You can go hear the whole show without any commercials at YouTube. If you want to listen to it, like and subscribe at Hugh Hewitt, and you will always get whatever we put up at the end of the day, thanks to Ben. I do, however, say, after the grandkids and after the 7 miles yesterday and the 3 miles this morning, Relief Factor really does come in handy. I'm feeling great, and I'm going to see Mission Impossible tonight. Now, that is a 3-hour movie, and that means I will be up late, which is fine. And I'm going against my better judgment because they all blur together. Generalissimo, have you gone to see this yet?
I haven't. In fact, my wife and I, over the last 2 weeks, have binge watched the first 6. We now need to watch part 1, and then we can go see it. So we're supposed to watch the first half of this sometime, I think, tomorrow night. And
well,
then,
you're actually you'll have a clue when you sit down. I won't have.
No,
a
we
clue.
won't. You have no idea. You can watch all 6 movies and still not have the foggiest idea what the heck's going on.
Well, I know that there will be extraordinary stunts. How did it do this weekend? Do you know? Did you look at the box office?
I didn't see the box office. It had to do extraordinarily well because there's nothing else out there.
There's Lilo and Stitch.
Okay.
Well, I did not get lobbied by the grandkids, thank goodness, because I would have I always get the short end of the stick of going to the movies that no other adult wants to go to. But I skipped that, and I didn't think
every adult in America that was looking for a movie went to go see Mission Impossible, I would think.
Yeah, that's why I waited till tonight. I did not want to deal with them over the long weekend, so I'm going to go see it tonight. I'll tell you about it tomorrow, and I'll do spoilers. All right, I'll do spoilers. But do not miss tomorrow, The Disenlightenment with David Mamet. And don't go anywhere. I got one more segment on today's program. I have one more piece of audio for you, which I kept for the end because it's funny, because it's from MSNBC, and I don't usually take from my old employer, but this one's too precious. Okay, I promised you a bit of MSNBC. It is my policy never to play anything from my old network because I can't say a good thing about it, but I'll let this speak for itself. It's Michael Bender talking to MSNBC, Chris Jansen, about poor Harvard. Remember, Harvard's got $50 billion in the bank, $55 billion, I think, in the bank. Cut number 12.
Confounded about what's going on, which is remarkable. Harvard is facing an existential, perhaps untenable crisis here. They've lost billions of dollars in in funding for shared research. The latest action last week to block Harvard from enrolling international students. That's a quarter of its student body. In their lawsuit, Harvard explains this as without this group of students, Harvard is not Harvard. And to be facing this sort of crisis and not really understand what is happening around him, I think is pretty telling. What is the end goal here? I mean, the end goal here is to inflict maximum pain on Harvard. We reported that there are people involved in this effort who set out wanting to topple a university to send a message, to have a scalp for the rest of academia, that this sort of unchecked liberalism that this administration sees happening on elite campuses around the country, it has to come to an end.
Now I want to tell you personal experience. I went to Harvard 74 to 78. In my freshman dorm, Stoughton, for those of you who know Harvard, had 80 students, one of whom was an international student, Gus Agostumi, if you're out there, hello Gus, from Guatemala. I then lived in Winthrop House, and Bobby Stams from Costa Rica, if you're out there, Bobby, hello. So those are the two international students I knew for 4 years. And I got around, right? I did a lot of stuff. Did a lot of politics, did a lot of social stuff, had a lot of fun, learned a lot, had a great education. The international students are not Harvard. There were not 31% when I was there. And Mr. Bender, I'm available to give you that quote that as a Harvard alum, I am very happy to see the hammer come down on an institution that as I left the 45th reunion the summer last, I said to myself, this place is so thoroughly broken. It was so wildly ideological, not going to come back, not going to give them a dime. Harvard is actually being helped by Donald Trump. In the way I would like you to help Angel Tree. This is where you really make a contribution and it matters. When you give $200 to Angel Tree, a child goes to camp this summer, a child whose mom and or dad is in jail. And they won't see him this summer, and they are in straitened circumstances, but you can make their summer come true. You can call Angel Tree at 888-206-2764. Listen to Janice, whose daughter Maddie went to the camp.
And like just the way like their manners were, and just how friendly they were, so welcoming, even though they didn't know us. So I thought that was incredible. And the best thing about it is having them learn also about Jesus, incorporating that.
The best
Something
thing about it is,
worth
yes, they learn scripture, but they also have a fabulous time in the woods. And Angel Tree makes it possible because you make it possible. $200 a camper. The banner is at the top of HughHewitt.com, or you can call 888-206-2764, 888-206-2764.